Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Liverpool Connection podcast. We have another episode of Childhood Heroes. This is episode 4. And today I'm joined by Dan, and we're going to have a little chat about Michael Owen. We have had Robbie Fowler, we have had Ian Rush, and we've had Steven Gerrard. And now we're going to be talking about a player that really should have been talked about in that category. But we'll get into that in a minute. Daniel, how are we, son?
Hello. Yes. Yeah, I'm really well. It feels a bit lockdowny, actually. I'm like on a laptop in my kitchen. But yeah, no, I'm good. I'm looking forward to it. I could talk about Michael Owen all day and all night, so I'm happy to be able to do it with you.
Yeah, we'll try and keep it to 30 minutes then. First, Dan, before we get into him, first real moments, or not moments, first real memories of getting into football, sort of getting into Liverpool as a kid. What were they? What can you remember?
Yeah, do you know what? So like maybe a little bit later for me the most. My first really strong memory was actually the 2001 FA Cup final, funnily enough. And I just remember like we had, it was really sunny and we were having a barbecue and there was people around ours. And I just like, normally I'm like really sociable. I want to chat to everyone. All I wanted to do was just sit there in front of the telly and watch Liverpool. And I just remember being glued to it. And I just remember that being the moment where I was like, wow, football can make me feel amazing. And that was the first time I kind of really, really had that experience from it.
Yeah, that was some cup final, but we'll get to that in a minute. Can you sort of remember? Can you sort of remember I don't know if that was the moment, to be fair, but where you sort of found Michael Owen and why it was him? What was the moment?
So Michael Owen, I suppose. So interestingly, and I don't know everyone else on the pod, I've never been like a huge England fan. But I actually, my first footballing memory is probably that Michael Owen goal. I think I would have been about 9, and I think it's kind of the first time I remember being allowed to like stay up late and watch football. Because it was on way past normal bedtime, wasn't it? And I don't know whether it was just the buzz of being able to stay. When you're 9 years old, being able to stay up is quite a buzz, isn't it? But I just remember like seeing this, like what would he have been like? Was he 18 at the time? Like, taking on these like Argentinian, like, huge centre halves and just like making them look silly, putting the ball in. And I remember like, I just remember my whole living room like cheering. And actually we weren't really into international football as a family. Maybe my mum's Welsh for a start. But actually I just remember like seeing that goal and being like, wow, like, just being sort of taken away by it really.
I'm the same. Like my hero is Michael Owen as well. So it's a bit crap because we've been doing things and speaking about all these amazing people and massive figures. So it is funny that ours is Michael Owen as well. But mine was the same moment, but I can sort of remember a little bit further back. I remember my granddad actually saying to me like, I don't know how he knew this because like back then, obviously there wasn't like always like footage of like academy footballers and that. But you remember him saying to me like, Liverpool have got this striker and he's going to be better than Robbie Fowler. And I was like, no.
I remember that was even. I remember that was the talk.
I was about 7 or something like that, and I can remember that, and I'm thinking, no, he's not. It's not going to be better than Robbie Fowler. But that was the moment. That was sort of the moment for me. The fact that he was already at Liverpool, and then he exploded on the scene. And just think as well, because Fowler had sort of got those injuries around the time. Do you think that sort of? I mean, obviously, do you think that sort of helped even more for like Liverpool point of view because Fowler was sort of injured and then you just got this new kid, this new superstar? It just sort of he was one of the best players in the world at like 18 years old, wasn't he?
Yeah, and football's like international. It's benefited from having players from all around the world, and like football, the quality's higher because of that. But like everyone loves a homegrown hero, right? There's something, and I know Michael Owen's from Chester, but like there was like he was our player, and he was off winning the Ballon d'Or. And I think that there was just there's something special about that, isn't it? You see it now with Trent. So you had it with Gerrard and Carragher, and then Fowler before Owen. And I think that Michael Owen was that generation's homegrown hero, wasn't he? The like the sort of the lad that you could relate to. He went to school not too far from you, and actually, wow, there he is, like nutmegging people, sticking the ball in, and winning the Ballon d'Or. And it's like, wow,
Yeah,
So yeah, I think that had a lot to do with it. I think the end of Fowler, we were ready for a hero, right? We needed a hero. We needed someone to like actually invest our efforts and excitement in, and like Michael Owen was that player, wasn't he, for a long time?
yeah. I've actually dug out this year. Dan, actually, this is one of my first tops as a kid.
You
Actually,
only got Owen on the back because remember it was
you know what?
by letter. You used to pay per letter.
You know what? I wish, but it's actually my name, and obviously Michael Owen
Oh no, that was an
18.
expensive one.
Was
Used to
18.
get
Yeah, I
Owen
know.
because it
But
was
for the
£1
sake
a
of it,
letter.
there was no Premier League badges on that. But that was sort of one of my first kits when I was sort of growing up. And I sort of got that from that sort of time. And
Which one's what year was that? Sorry,
that
show
was
me
about
again.
98, I think. I think that
Is
was
it?
98. That was probably a hand-me-down, to be fair, and I ended up just getting 18 Owen on it because of 18 and my own name on it just because of him. But can you
Because
sort
I
of
think my first kit might have been that 2001.
yeah, red
Sort
one?
of like a weird, strange color, wasn't it? It was like a almost like yellowy,
Oh, the
bronzy
gold
type
one.
color. The gold one,
That
yeah.
was that kit.
Yeah, and like sometimes you see those things, don't you, on Twitter or whatever? Like, who do you think of when you see this shirt? And whenever you see that gold shirt with like, they did have like navy
Yeah.
navy art sleeves, didn't it? You just think of Michael Owen
Oh yeah,
scoring
100%.
goals, don't
Think
you?
about that cup final, don't you?
Yeah,
So we'll go a little bit further on. And you did mention at the start, 2001. We'll save the FA Cup final for a minute. That season in general, he was just absolutely electric, wasn't he? I mean, for those couple of years even before, I mean, you got to remember Liverpool back end of the 90s, not great at all. And he was the sort of shining star, especially with Fowler's injury and just struggles he had with it. But for those 2 or 3 years, there might not have been a better forward in the league.
yeah. I mean, well, he was top goal scorer 2 years in a row, wasn't he? He won the Ballon d'Or, which actually, to not win a World Cup or a Champions League and win the Ballon d'Or is quite an achievement. Even with the Messis and Ronaldos, it tended to be whichever one had just won the Champions League or won an international tournament. So just to show how highly he was regarded across the world despite not winning major honours is sort of testament to him, really, isn't it? And I think it was his style of play as well that made him so exciting. Like just that turn of pace. Everything happened quickly, didn't it? You wouldn't see him for 10, 20 minutes, and then the next thing you know, he's making a run off the last shoulder. He's just dropped the shoulder, beat a defender, and smashed it in. And it was just like out of nowhere, you had a goal, didn't you?
Yeah, he really was. He was just electric, wasn't he? He was absolutely electric. And you think about now, and you think about now, like with all the high lines for Michael Owen, like he would have scored even more goals. I think he may have had to have played on one of the sides, but like the way football's gone, he may have been one of those inside wingers or whatever. Is there anyone that you would say that he would be like now? Is there anyone you could sort of compare Owen to?
I mean, he's probably. I mean, maybe probably.
In his pomp, I mean.
I mean, probably like stylistically, he reminds me like Mbappe reminds me a little bit of him, And I know Mbappe's gone to bigger better levels than Owen, hasn't he? He's a way better player. I'm not saying the two are comparable, but actually, yeah, in terms of style, that sort of like almost standing start to really quick turn of pace and then a goal. You think, do you know that World Cup final goal? Was it the second one from Mbappe where he's on the left hand side of the box and he's got the ball and like the defender's like half a yard off him. And like from the defender's point of view, everything looks fine, right? You're like, he's on the edge of the box. I feel okay. I've got half a yard. And then just quick turn of pace. And then he smashes it really hard to the other corner. Like that was a little bit like the FA Cup goal, wasn't it? I can't remember if it was the first or the second. There's a ball over the top. Like the defender thinks he's got him. And then, Michael Owen just hits a shot really early and really hard. And you see a lot of strikers do that, like Haaland does that. He just gets out his feet really quickly. And it's actually, if you're quite close to the keeper, if you hit it hard enough, it doesn't even need to go in the corner. A lot of Haaland's goals don't even go in the corner. But yeah, I think stylistically, probably Mbappe. And actually, do you know what? Until Mbappe, there's probably a case for Michael Owen being the most exciting teenager. At 18, like to be bursting onto a World Cup, scoring that goal against Argentina, following that up with like winning goals in cup finals for Liverpool and then winning the Ballon d'Or. You know, I think bar Mbappe, you actually struggle to find a teenager who really set the world alight the way Michael Owen did.
Do you think he was better? Do you think as teenagers it's a bit different? But do you think he was better than Rooney? It's a hard one, isn't it?
It is a hard one because Rooney had a bit more to his game, didn't he? I think Rooney was a bit more of an all-round footballer. You know, Michael Owen, you know, as brilliant as he was, and you know, my boyhood hero, I talk about him all day. But like he was just about goals, wasn't he? Just about goals. You know, he didn't really come deep, link the play up. Whereas Rooney, you know, Rooney could have played number 10 or even number 8, couldn't he? In his early career, you know, he was a much better all-round footballer, I think, than Owen. But you know, I think in terms of the Premier League, Rooney had, you know, as big, if not bigger, an impact than Owen as a teenager. But at the international stage, like Owen definitely eclipsed him in those early years.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we've held off 2001 FA Cup final. It's hard to really put into words just how much we got battered in that game. I mean, even as a kid, remembering like Liverpool definitely did not deserve to win that cup final.
No.
And then the 2 goals are just, if there's 2 goals, it's going to sum them up. It's those 2 goals, isn't it? What was your real thoughts of it?
Yeah, I remember, as I say, like this is like such a strong footballing memory for me. I actually remember being like really sad for almost the entirety of the game because like we were only getting beat 1-0, but Arsenal was so in control, weren't they? You know, it was like, it felt like we didn't touch the ball. And then I think, you know, you had that like Honcho handball, didn't you, at 0-0?
Thank God there's no VAR.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. To be honest, Honcho would have been sent off every other week if there was VAR, I think. He was always handball. It was
the handball, yeah.
But I think it was like I know for me as a kid, it was like quite a big early lesson, right? Because obviously I was really excited about the cup final, and you know, there's that moment, and we talk about it. I talk about it with you. I talk about it with Matt. You know, just before you're going into the game, and it kind of doesn't really matter what's going on, like how many injuries you've got, how much better that other team is than you. There's this like sense of anticipation before the game where you're absolutely convinced you're going to win. Nothing else is happening, right? You can go get beat 6-0, but in that like half an hour, 45 minutes before the game, like you don't see any other possibility. So actually, you know, as an 11-year-old to be confronted with absolute domination from the opposing team, I was like, oh, this isn't really what I signed up for. You know, this is quite sad.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, like we said before, you know, just out of nowhere, Michael Owen scored, didn't he? And that's why he was so exciting for me, was that you were never beat with Michael Owen on the pitch, because it didn't really matter what was going on. He could always get you a goal.
Yeah, it's such an iconic final, isn't it? And obviously, I think the only probably more iconic FA Cup final, well, of our lives is obviously the Gerrard one, years later. But yeah, it was just incredible. I mean, he was so important. Obviously, scoring in Alves as well, the final there. But as we sort of come a little bit closer, did you have a feeling? Did you have a feeling that it was only going to go one way and he was always going to leave?
Yeah, I think Rafa always felt like the end of Owen. I think in terms of like what Rafa wanted from his players was, you know, sort of, it was a bit more systematic, wasn't it? It was, you know, this is how we set up. Everyone has their role, and I expect, you know, sort of attacking and defending from everyone on the pitch, really. And I think that, you know, that wasn't Michael Owen's game, was it? And I know his game had to adjust as he sort of got older and with the injuries, but you know, Michael Owen could, you know, he could have like 10 touches a game, couldn't he? And yeah, 2 of them would be goals. But you know, that wasn't really ever going to be Rafa's style, I think. And you know, it's interesting. I make the like Haaland comparison, not because he's on the same level, but you know, that type of striker where they don't really do anything else. You kind of have to build a team around them, right? And, you know, even City, Pep's completely transformed the way he plays to, you know, get the best out of a player like that. But I don't think, I never got the impression that Rafa was going to do that, I think, you know. And particularly, you know, Owen's star had begun to fall, even at that point, hadn't it? You know, I think he'd had bad injuries, hadn't he? He'd missed a lot of the season before. So I think that, yeah, I think as soon as Rafa came in, I I was pretty convinced it was the end of Owen. Yeah.
It had that sort of feeling though, didn't it? Even before Rafa, there was like even like the year before, there was sort of that feeling, and then there was a little bit of like, he wasn't really as committed towards it. Like when he would celebrate goals, he wasn't really like, it didn't seem like he was that. And then there was a little bit more of like, Michael Owen was always England's, and he wasn't really ours. And I don't know if that is, there might be some truth to that. I think there's a little bit of that, and also the fact that Robbie Fowler was ours. He was just ours, wasn't he? Robbie Fowler was a Liverpool player, and he never really played for England. There was a little bit of that as well.
Do you think it had anything to do with the fact he wasn't Scouse, or?
I don't think it is that, because he was at Liverpool since he was about 8 years old. Do you know what I mean? So I don't necessarily think it was that. It's just that even remember as a kid, it always felt like Michael Owen was like England's Michael Owen, which might not be fair, might not be necessarily fair on him. But you always think about those four. It was all like Gerrard, Murphy, Owen, and Carragher, and they were those. That was that four, that was just so important to that sort of period of like the 2001, 2002, sort of period. So I could always see it. It always looked like it was coming. The fact that he went for 8 million, and who was that winger? Because I'm pretty sure you probably seen him. You probably had seen some stats, and you were probably Dan's one of the most positive Reds I know. So he was probably telling me that we just signed like, I can't remember who was the winger that we signed. The part of the deal, it was 8 million, wasn't it? And a winger from Real Madrid.
Oh yeah, it was. I remember his name. He was Spanish, and yeah, I was excited. About him.
It was now.
Oh, he's got black hair. I can see him.
Anyway, signing him for
Antonio Nunes. Antonio Nunes. Yeah.
Always prepared on this podcast. So yeah, having like the fact that it was 8 million for a player that was one of the best, and he had a year on his contract. It was heartbreaking. I was absolutely devastated by it, to be honest. Even as a young kid, sort of knowing that it was coming, I was devastated. What about yourself?
Yeah, do you know, it was mixed for me, because like obviously I was devastated that Owen was going, but I remember being genuinely really quite excited about Rafa. Like I think his Valencia team had come and like absolutely taught us a lesson, hadn't they, at Anfield? And I remembered that. And then like Rafa's press conferences, particularly early on, he seemed to really understand the club, didn't he? So I think I kind of was like, when all the rumours was flying, and then there was that game, do you remember where he didn't play in the Champions League qualifier, so he didn't get cup tied? He sat on the bench. Don't you remember that? Yeah. And then obviously that was the game where you were like, it really hit home, and I was like, oh, actually, I'm really sad about this. I was like, I think I'd let the like Rafa optimism like hide my true feelings, and then when that like slash, I was 13, right? So I was probably like, no, he'll stay, it'll be fine. And then when that Champions League game, he sat on the bench to not cup tie himself, I was like, oh wow. I was like, this is sad. And yeah, I was devastated. And then you see the press conference, don't you? And he's got the shirt, and yeah, it was a really, really sad moment, because and I know that like for a lot of people, Fowler was the bigger hero, and after that, obviously, we were lucky enough to have some pretty special homegrown players, but like for us particularly, right, that was when we were getting into football. Like he was the kind of perfect timing for us, wasn't he? Like the World Cup goal, we were like 8 or 9, treble, we were 11. So actually that's the time when you're first discovering football and what it can do for you, how it can make you feel. It can make you can go from sitting just, doing nothing, to shouting up and down and screaming. And, for me, that period between like, 1998 to 2002, most of the moments of joy I had from football were through Michael Owen.
Yeah, I know, it's really sad, mate. I remember walking in like a Sports Direct, and I was going to try and get like a Real Madrid top with Owen on the back, and the lad that was there was like, why would you do that? Like he's just left Liverpool in the lurch. Why are you going to? And I'm like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know, but I just adored him, and I was so sad that he was going. But you think about it, right? And like, it's funny because now you get older, you start to realise that like players will leave and whatnot. But he's gone to Real Madrid, mate, and they've got Morientes, Raúl, and they've got Ronaldo.
Yeah, I know.
It's Zidane, Beckham. I think Figo was still there as well. And you're like, well, you can sort of see why you wouldn't want to stay at Liverpool and play with Milan Barros. But
do you think it was extra sad because it was the first time like a footballer had left us? Do you like, obviously you get used to your kind of heroes leaving, don't you? You know, as you get older, and B, as it happens more often. Particularly like, for a lot of time, Liverpool was a club you could leave quite easily. Do you know what I mean? If you were a Suarez or a Sterling, we weren't the team that Klopp's made us into. So do you think it was because it was the first one and you were like, oh wow, this is what happens, they leave, this is like, it's like when your first girlfriend leaves you, isn't it? And like you just feel dark for days.
I mean, yeah, there's a bit of that, but I was absolutely heartbroken when Torres left, so I obviously didn't win.
To be honest, I think you cried when Bobby Firmino left, didn't you? So
yeah, no, it doesn't take I know. Anyway, he goes there. Massive rumour. He obviously is only there a year. Massive rumour. He's coming back. Mm-hmm. And then there's a massive talk that he's going to come back and it's between us and Newcastle, and he obviously wants to come to us over Newcastle.
Yeah.
What was your thoughts when that was sort of rumoured about? Were you buzzing?
Yeah, I was. I was absolutely buzzing. Yeah. I want to be the guy who's like, nah, I knew it wouldn't work out. Our football had moved on, blah, 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 but like, to have my boyhood hero back, it must be how people felt, when Fowler came back the second time, right? Particularly that generation slightly older than us. That was like, the homecoming, wasn't it? Yeah. God coming home. And yeah, I was like, yeah, getting back. And actually, there was that thing doing the rounds, wasn't there? Like his goals per minute was actually really good in Madrid, wasn't it?
When he started and played, yeah, it was actually quite good.
Yeah, he had the best goals per minute of any player in Madrid.
I love how they do that. I love how they skew it like that.
Yeah, but you get,
this is good 5 in the cup against like the division Spanish team. His goal minutes is absolutely boss. Yeah, he's well better than Ronaldo.
Yeah, but no, I was excited, and then I remember sort of, Newcastle weren't really any competition, were they? So you were like, oh, this will be fine, this. And then I remember reading in the Echo that like Liverpool had refused to pay any more than they got for him.
Yeah,
and I was like, I kind of, on the one hand, you understand it, right? Because we were both quite aggrieved to lose our childhood hero, Ballon d'Or winner, for 8 million. But then also, like, you want him back so much that you're like, just pay it. It was 16 million, wasn't it? They wanted, I think.
And we let him go for, like I say, we let him go for 8, and then Nunes, which was basically 8.
So Nunes was probably minus.
Yeah, exactly. But it's weird, isn't it? The fact because we'd won the Champions League, obviously, the year that he left. I wonder whether as well the cup were a little bit like, well, we've been all right. We've been okay. It's the start of the Rafa year. We're not going to go and spend double the money to get him back again. I mean, ultimately, it was the right decision, wasn't it? As much as it was devastating for us as kids. But he goes to Newcastle. Doesn't really do anything at Newcastle, does he?
No, I mean, there's flashes, isn't there? He scores that. He scores the perfect hat trick, doesn't he? I think he scores against West Ham, which he pretty much always did. And I think there was a spell where he scored like in 3 or 4 games in a row, and then got injured, obviously. So I think there was flashes of what he was, right, and what he had, but I suppose you don't know how much of it was injuries, how much his heart wasn't in it.
Right. Okay, we've been nice.
But so yes, now it was the right decision.
So now, so he's left Newcastle on a free.
Yeah.
At that point, were you still like, let's get him back on a free? Because I mean, thinking about it now, it's absolutely bonkers, isn't it? It's like a player who's constantly injured, who was once good for Liverpool, and getting him back. It's so stupid, really, to want him back.
Yeah.
But I still wanted them back at that point. I presume you were the same.
Do you know what?
Don't lie.
I think I did the same thing again, where like I was like, nah, it's silly getting him back, you know, like he's old now, he's injured. And then started looking at his goals per minute for Newcastle. I was like, nah, he can still do, you know, if we can keep him fit, manage his games,
Yeah.
you know, and yeah, I think that's the problem, right? Is that, you know, and it's sort of like what Ronaldo's found out recently, and, you know, like Messi as well, is that you, as a football fan, you remember when you think of a footballer, you think of them at their pomp, right? You think of them at their peak. So, you know, when you know, obviously we're doing this pod now, and, you know, in 10 years, when you tell your kids about Michael Owen, you'll tell them about 2001. Well, you know, you'll maybe tell them about the World Cup goal. You'll tell them about the Ballon d'Or. You won't tell them about his, you know, his sitting on the bench at Stoke. So I think that happens even during their career. So, you know, you're like, you think, oh, we can get Michael Owen back. That's great. But you're not getting 2001 Michael Owen, are you? You're getting 2009 Michael Owen.
Yeah. I just think, like, at the time I think we had in go at the time. I sort of was a bit like, well, you know what, you might sort of do you a job, but probably with the budget that we had and stuff. Anyway, let's just get to it. He signs for them. It's hard to really, it's hard to really describe, just because it came from absolutely nowhere. Let's be honest, because the teams he was being linked with was, I know he got linked with Everton. He got linked with some other like lower Premier League teams, and then the United one just sort of came from absolutely nowhere. So what was your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, you know what, genuinely, and I think, you know, obviously we're about 20 at this time, you know, started to mature a little bit. I kind of understood
Were
it.
you?
Yeah. I mean, correct me, maybe I'm misremembering this, right? But
yeah, definitely not.
Nah, I was absolutely raging. Yeah, I think you know, we'll talk later, hopefully, about, you know, how opinions have changed and should change on him, I think. But at the time, yeah, you know, he was like, I think it was because he made such a big play to come back, right? Do you know, when he left Madrid, he was like, sort of, oh, I'm a Liverpool player. I didn't even want to leave. You know, bring me back. I'm your boy. I'm Liverpool through and through. And I think that then it kind of made everything he'd said a lie, right? In a way, because you were like, oh, well, if you're so Liverpool, you're so, you know, entrenched in our club, our culture identity, you wouldn't move to Man United, would you?
Mate, I remember that game, that first one he came back, and I remember me and you.
We were there, weren't we?
Yeah, it was like it's like
Toxic.
seeing like your ex-wife who just left you, and she's over there and she's with like the biggest dickhead, your biggest enemy, and you're like, we were once in love and it was so great, and now you're over there, and yeah, it was absolutely horrible. I absolutely despised them for it. And I know I'm probably not I'm not even matured now. I still think he's an absolute idiot for doing it. Like, if I'm gonna be a bit like, I did see a podcast with him with Carragher on The Greatest Game, and he was sort of a bit like, well, it was either go to Everton, go to Man United, or I think it might have been a go to Stoke. It was someone like that. It was sort of someone that level, or West Brom or someone. And it was a bit like, well, if I could put it towards you, the listener, what would you do? And he has a point, but you just don't go there.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's the problem. Is, I suppose, when you actually, you know, when you actually sit down and be like calm and logical about it, like, why wouldn't you go and play for the best team in England? You know, like, they were the best team in England at that point when they won the league, didn't he? You know, there. So I think, yeah, you know, now the dust has settled, I think I look differently on it. And I think about Gerrard. Actually, Gerrard had an interesting quote about the reception Owen got at Anfield. And he said, you get players that have played like 2 games and contributed nothing to Liverpool, and they come back and they get a hero's reception. And then everything Michael Owens did, and look at the reception he's getting. And I genuinely, I think at the time, I was probably screaming at him, right? But now I think Gerrard's spot on, you know, and I think that, you know, especially like football now, that, you know, nobody stays at one club, do they, forever? So I think we as fans have become a bit more accepting that your best player is going to leave and he's going to play for someone else. And actually, you know, maybe you've just got to enjoy the time you had, right, and what they brought to you.
I'm surprised that you've said that, because I totally disagree. I absolutely can't stand them. I can't. Like, you've got a kid that's been in your academy since they're 9 years old. They've been with you for 10 years, playing with you for probably 7, 8 years or whatever, and then to leave and go and play for your biggest rivals. And then even some of the stuff he said, like winning the league was one of his proudest moments of his career and stuff. Like, you played about 6 games, you're absolute dick. But honestly, I'm not thinking about it, Dan. I'm not.
Yeah, you sound like you've really mellowed out about it, mate.
About 15 years. Like, I'm surprised that you're quite.
Yeah, I have mellowed out about it, I have. And this isn't to say I was an angel about it and I was really well thought out and logical at the time. I wasn't. I was annoyed, but I think as you get older, and I think as you realise, that like this is what football's like, right? Your heroes leave, they play somewhere else, and that's just how it is. And I suppose the reason it was so hard to take was because Michael Owen was the first experience we had of that, right? Of like actually to have a like childhood hero, you kind of obviously they have to have like a longish career, right? So you have to start, right. Look at Rooney, he's the kind of the first footballer we saw really start to end, isn't it? For like our generation. So you as a kid you attach so much hope and like expectation and dreams into this player, and then they like eventually they absolutely tarnish it for you, don't they?
Do you know what, mate? I was just thinking there. I was thinking about Torres, and obviously when Torres left, it absolutely broke us. And the fact that he went to Chelsea, and like Chelsea and United they're not the same. Like people will think that there's this massive rivalry with Chelsea. It's not really. It sort of came during that sort of Mourinho, Rafa period.
It's quite a contemporary ride. That was more because we were playing each other for everything, weren't we? We were meeting each other in the semis.
But the fact that Torres went there and everyone was absolutely fuming with him and just more devastated the fact that he left. But I would say that most people now, even Torres has played at Anfield and he's had a good reception since. And he went directly. He went directly from Chelsea to Liverpool to Chelsea. Michael Owen, obviously, they've gone to Real Madrid, then he gone to Newcastle. But it's the fact that it's them. The fact that it's them. That's the problem. But anyway, we'll move on. I do think in some ways, just from an actual, like, just how good of a player he was, the fact that he sort of ended his career at Stoke and on the bench at Stoke. It's weird, isn't it? Just because he was probably at the best when he was like 18 to 22. It's probably his best period as a footballer, which is nuts, isn't it?
Yeah, because they used to, when we were growing up, it used to be 28 was the peak, wasn't it? And and actually, when it came to 30, you'd be thinking about retiring them, And I think that's going to change, isn't it? Because sports science is so much better. Footballers look after themselves a lot better now. So I think that is changing. But yeah, like not many players had like such a front-loaded career as him, right? Like all the good stuff happened in like the first 5 years, didn't it? Yeah. And after then, it was only ever downhill. And I can't really think of a player like that. Not that had such a sustained period of success. Obviously, you get the few footballers, like a Makeda at United who has a few good games, costs us the league, and then does nothing. But very few players go to the heights Michael Owen did for that many years, right? Probably the best striker in England for four years, the best player in the world for one of those years, Liverpool's top goal scorer for all of them. And then it kind of like just ended, didn't it? Like it's almost like he did his career backwards, right?
Yeah, it is crazy, isn't it? It is. I mean, the fact that he had those injuries. I mean, when you're a player that is so reliant on pace. I mean, don't get me wrong. He had more to his game than that. He had fantastic movement and he was unbelievable finishing and stuff like that. But I think he's come out as well, hasn't he? And said that basically when he was like 18, 19, he felt like he was one of the best players in the world. And yeah, it is. I think not as bad because obviously he had a longer career. But back to Rooney, I think Rooney had an unbelievable time when he was young, and he was great. But he ended quite early as well, didn't he?
Yeah, although Rooney was eating like takeaways after training when he in the afternoon, so I think it was never gonna be key to longevity, that wasn't it? But I suppose there's not that many players anymore, is there, that like burst onto the scene and really, really good for that many years and then just quickly fall off. But but yeah, Michael Owen definitely fits that bill. And I've seen quite a few interviews with him now, actually. He did quite a good one on BT Sport, like a 10-minute chat. And he basically says that he didn't really sprint after he left Madrid. He was like, I just had so many injuries and I was so sort of, I was so fearful of getting injured that I just never sprinted. And then he said that like starts to affect his movement, because he's like, well, there's no point being on the last shoulder anymore because I'm not going to make that run anyway. Yeah. So you start coming deeper, and then midfielders change the way they play for you. So he was like, I couldn't wait to retire. He actually said that. He's like, I couldn't wait to retire. And you know, and I actually, you know, in a way, like when you listen to his reasons behind it, I respect it in a way, because he's like, you know, I was the best player in the world. I was used to playing for Liverpool, Real Madrid. I'm like, oh, all right, latterly Man United. I know he didn't play a big role there, but you know, like Michael Owen was a big player, and then to be like on the bench at Stoke, you know, it's embarrassing, isn't it? And like he must have been really sad about it, and I can see why that he would say he can't wait to retire.
Yeah, I have, although I had a little meltdown there, I have mellowed a little bit towards him. I think listening to a lot of the stuff that he's come out with, I can sort of understand it a little bit more and whatnot. And I think he genuinely does, like, I think he genuinely does hurt him, the fact that he's not more appreciated at Liverpool. Just that you think about it now and you think about the end of his career, and you don't really attach him to any real club. Because Liverpool fans are obviously a little bit mixed about him. It must have been weird for United as well for when he went there. And then obviously the same with Newcastle as well. They don't really have anything from him. He's basically like England's Michael Owen, isn't he, really?
Yeah, he is. But I think that feels harsh. And I think that as time goes on, probably, I think that it'll start to be appreciated a bit more. And I think that, like, you know, don't underestimate what he did. Genuinely, like that 2001 season, to be top goal scorer, like, you know, Liverpool's top goal scorer 4 years in a row, the Premier League's 2 years in a row. I think, you know, I don't worry, I understand the like negativity, the way he left, like joining Man United. I do understand that. However, I hope in, like, you know, 10 years when we're looking back, you know, maybe I'll have me on again and we'll do this podcast again. And I hope that, like, public perception from Liverpool fans will have changed, and we will start to appreciate him a little bit more, you know, because he's my hero, right? And yeah, he made me sad, but like, you know, he gave me like, and all of us as Liverpool fans, he gave us brilliant footballing moments, didn't he? You know, and it's like, you look at, go on.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, I think that's the more like we'll be doing these, and like every person we've got on, like, you know, we're gonna be doing one with Keith in a couple of weeks, doing like Dalglish, and then Fowler, and then Ian Rush, and they're all idolised, and like it's just crap that childhood hero is just a bit, his perception is just a bit meh because of what's going on. But I suppose it's the way it goes, isn't it?
It's actually interesting, isn't it? I was going to use the comparison of like Divock Origi, right? Like Divock Origi will be lauded by Liverpool fans, you know, for years, you know, years and years, right? You know, we'll be talking that Champions League final goal, you know, sat behind the goal, like that moment, I can close my eyes and be there, right? Be back in the ground, and I'll feel that. And like everyone loves Divock Origi, don't they? And like he wasn't a tenth of the player Michael Owen was. And, you know, it's just interesting, isn't it, that like Michael Owen's had this massive contribution, and sort of despite all that success that he brought us and that like career he had, everyone's managed to hate him, you know, whereas Origi's like a terrible footballer and we all love him. So it's interesting.
Yeah, no, it's all right. Well, we'll end on a positive. We'll end on a bit of a positive note then. You may have said it before, actually, but if there's any real one big moment, one big either a goal, a moment you can sort of remember, it's running out in the back garden or whatever it is there a iconic moment that sort of stands out for you when you think about Michael Owen?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the FA Cup final, but you know, that's too obvious, isn't it? For me, I remember. Do you remember the hat trick against Newcastle? And he did that celebration where he rubbed his hands there. I remember I just remember recreating that. You know, like that was all I wanted to do was like, you know, obviously you're playing football at the time, aren't you? And I mean, I didn't score many goals, but you know, you score a goal and you're like, you want to do the Michael Owen, don't you? I think I remember that hat trick, and I just remember how much better he was than them. You know, like he was just playing on a different level, wasn't he? He scored a hat trick, made it look easy, and then that little hands celebration, you know, and it had that shirt with the big white collar, didn't it? And I remember having that. And yeah, that's the you know, apart from the obvious, the trophy wins, that's the standout Michael Owen moment for me.
Yeah, brilliant. Right, Dan. Well, I really enjoyed that. Guys, these are going to be coming out every single Sunday morning, so get yourselves tuned into that. And make sure you like and subscribe. We're at 17,000 subscribers now, which is amazing. So if you can get subscribed and get us up to 20 before the season starting, that'd be amazing. But anyway, guys, we'll see you on the next one. Dan, thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks. Anytime.